My name is Omoshola Fibrosima, and today I am with Cynthia conducting this special podcast on behalf of Hummingbird Club in Catford. And I'll be you will actually be going down memory lane, talking and spotlighting her journey. She's lived in Lewisham. She's going to tell us how long for. If she can remember, we're going to be spotlighting stories, sacrifices, resilience, generational influence, and community impact within the borough of Lewisham. And we will be highlighting the Windrush as we go along. So you are very much welcome. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you.
Great. So if you don't mind introducing yourself, we're talking about your journey in Lewisham, the highs, the lows, the excitement, a little bit about you, and then I'll delve into some other questions.
Okay, my name is Cynthia Gaynor Bailey, and I have lived in Lewisham for over 50 years.
Wow.
So that's a very long time. Lived in Lewisham. I worked in Lewisham for a long time, for Lewisham Council as well.
Okay, well, we're gonna unpack all of that. 50 years. You must have seen so much evolve over that period of time. But I want to take you back to the very early years, how far you can remember. What was Lewisham like for you then? And then we'll look at what has changed since then. What was it like growing up here in Lewisham?
Well, I moved to Lewisham as a teenager.
Okay.
And I moved from Southwark, where my mother lived until her passing. What I remember back then, we used to have a lot of fun. There are lots of parties everywhere, Caribbean parties. There were dances held in New Cross, places like the Amersham Arms. There were weekend dances and midweek dances. We used to also go out to the carnival, the Notting Hill Carnival, and there was a real sense of a young community back then. When I moved to Lewisham, we had a department store at Cheeseman's, which later became the Army and Navy. We had Cobb's at Cobb's Corner in Sydenham. Where the police station is now in Lewisham, I believe it's the largest police station in Europe. That used to be the site of the department store. We used to frequent places like the Modern Market, which people call the Black Market, and we would get all our Caribbean fares there, yams, sweet potatoes, green bananas, dasheen. So that was a real community hub as well. I think in Lewisham, we mixed very well, I would say, as a community. On my street, for instance, we all tend to know each other. And as people move out and new people move in, people all they just follow what there is, a sense of community. In fact, many people do not want to leave a street once they move in. And they prefer to extend than to get a bigger property because it's such a very friendly street. I love Lewisham. It's not perfect. Sometimes I'd like to see it looking more attractive, for instance. But it's home. And I think you have to love your home. Like I said, I actually worked for Lewisham Council for many, many, many years. When I first went, I was a welfare rights officer. And as time went on with changes, I went abroad and lived in Botswana for a year, for instance. When I came back, that post was cut. And I went into different roles throughout the years because there's no such thing now, as we all know, as job for life. At one time in the council, from what I understand, you'd have whole families working for the council, grandfather, father, son, and it was expected. But now there's no such thing as jobs for life, and that's very much part of what Lewisham Council was. You never know when there would be a reorganisation. But what I will say is that there was a sense of friendship. As Black staff, we have the Black Staff Forum, which was, I think, for a long time led by what's become a very good friend, Jenny Bailey. And we all still meet up from time to time and attend various events together.
I really wanted you to go down memory lane, and you're doing very well, because sometimes you have to dig deeper than, just the obvious of the now, because we're going to talk about the now. But some of the things that I picked up were places that no longer exist. I know we had an, off-camera conversation, and you were talking about how the community has become metropolitan now because of the changes of people coming in, people moving. What's your experience of that? And what have you liked about it? What's been a challenge about this massive change? I go down certain streets even now and I don't recognize them anymore. What have you missed? And what's the benefit of this beautiful new merge?
Yes, we are very cosmopolitan. It reflects London as a whole. When I first moved to Lewisham, there was obviously the white community. That's still the largest community, obviously. And then I think the next larger community was the Caribbean community. And I think that's now changed or on the cusp of changing. We didn't have a big West African community back then, but we do now. Mm-hmm. We also have a large Turkish community and various people that have moved in, such as asylum seekers. We saw various restaurants set up to reflect the people who are now living in Lewisham. And it's nice, and it's become a melting pot. And I think Lewisham's people, I think, as a whole, get on very well, because when we were attacked by the National Front who moved into Lewisham, for instance, I believe that was back in 1977.
Wow.
My memory serves me well. Everybody went out to confront them. Not just black people, there are Asian people, there are white people, there are mixed race. Everybody went out to confront them. And I think people actually came together to say, you cannot walk into Lewisham and attack Lewisham's people. There is racism, of course. Even in the council, there was racism. But, you're going to experience that. Mm-hmm. But I think the thing is not to look for it and not to always assume everything is because of racism. Sometimes people might just not like you because of who you are, the clothes you wear, the way you speak, whatever. For instance, in the council, if you experience problems, I think you have to stand up for yourself as an employee and go through the council's processes. Mm. And some you win and some you lose. That is life. But I've, on the whole, enjoyed working for Lewisham. I learned a lot. They did do a lot to develop staff, if you are so inclined. And it also depends on if you had very good managers. And I've had a few good managers.
I'm really taking this all in and looking at where it is right now and going, wow, so this is what it was and this is it now. Now, you've done various roles. And yes, I think even before Job for Life came along, you actually seemed to me like somebody who likes adventure. Hence going to Botswana, hence changing jobs and changing roles. Within those roles, which one stood out most for you and why?
I think information is power. Mm. And that's why I love my jobs as advice worker, welfare rights, because you're empowering people to know what their rights are, and to support them in achieving those rights. I love developing special needs housing, people with special needs, mental illness, care leavers, because I think everybody deserves a home. I know in the homelessness legislation we have priority groups, but I actually think everybody deserves a decent home. I pretty much enjoyed most of my jobs, not absolutely all of them, but the ones where I worked directly with the communities, were able to help them with claim what they're entitled to, be able to help them with appeals and commissioners' decisions. Those things are probably no longer existent. We used to work closely at one time with Citizens Advice Bureau, other community organisations, and I think the community organisations or the third sector, the voluntary sector, that's a very, very important sector as well. Mm. Because quite often they're the ones who go out and spearhead things.
Yeah.
And it's good for local government to work with community groups. And the community groups have done a lot. Now, at the moment, I'm thinking of people like the Marsha Phoenix Trust, which was run by a lady called Sybil Phoenix. Mm-hmm. She was OBMB, but a remarkable lady who did so much, in particular for young people. She opened up her home, fed them, canvassed, the council to be able to provide for these young people. Mm. And getting them into education and supporting them. People like Asquith Gibbs. That was a plan of Asquith Gibbs outside Lewisham Police Station. If you pass by.
I will take caution and have a look.
Because when he died, unfortunately, some years ago, and it was the senior police officers who were pallbearers at his funeral.
Wow.
He used to give them a hard time, in making sure that young people and people are not disrespected by anybody in the community. And he also helped to bring black staff into the council, because at the time when I came, there were a few black staff working for the council. And I think the few that were there probably started more in the housing department. You'd find black staff in frontline jobs a lot. And obviously those are the difficult roles.
Yeah.
And usually the roles are not well paid. Just to get people in the first instance, many black people have come and they've grown and done very well. And there is racism. And from what I hear, that's continuing. I think there are also people who love to work together and support you, because sometimes it's amazing how many white people can come to your defense and support you at times. Like I say, there are times when people don't like people for many reasons. So don't always assume that to be the case.
Yeah. You talk a lot about community and community work, and I see the fact that there is that nurturing nature in you to help and to support. I wanted to take that community even more nuclear in terms of family and what impact. I mean, you may be giving stories, or maybe they'll be listening to stories now about your journey and your life. What are some of the things that you feel has been impacted to your immediate generation?
I always go back to my grandmother. I came to this country when I was 9 years old. And until then, I was mostly brought up by my grandmother. So you can imagine that was a great loss to me. Mm. And unfortunately, I was never in a position to see her again, although we used to communicate. She was very much a community person. I remember in Jamaica, she was the one who would write to people, to the government, and make sure there was electric lights, make sure things were done in the area, literally. So I think maybe I've got a grounding from that time. Community is important because you never know when you're going to need people's support, maybe your neighbour's support.
Yeah.
You just never know, and you never know. And I think it's good to be able to step in and support each other as well. We're not much an island, are we?
No.
We need other people around us. Hence, I come to this Hummingbird Club. Since I've retired, I've been going to clubs. I now come to this club in Hummingbird. I also go to the Pineapple in Annerley. I travel a lot. My husband died in 2012, unfortunately, and for a long time I was very, very lost, very lost, because we did everything together, everything. We used to travel a lot, whenever we can, whenever we could afford it. Some people prioritize expensive cars. We have a comfortable home, but we did prioritize our holidays. And I've continued to do that.
Yeah.
And I've travelled a great deal since he's died. Like I said, at first I didn't want to do anything. And then I decided to book myself on a Mediterranean cruise all by myself.
Wow.
And I did that. And I decided to do the things that we planned to do but didn't achieve in his lifetime. So in that time I've been to many countries in South America, including Peru, because we wanted to go and see Machu Picchu.
Wow.
And I went to Australia. I booked myself on a trip to Australia and New Zealand. And then I asked some friends if they'd like to come with me, which they did.
Well, I really love the fact that you traveled. I mean, are there any specific places that you went that was of interest to you?
Oh, many places. Going to Machu Picchu was amazing because my husband and I always wanted to see that place. And when I thought about going there, I thought, well, I might as well go to other South American countries. So obviously Machu Picchu is in Peru. I went to Argentina, Brazil, and various other South American places.
Wow.
I did a land tour, and I also did a cruise. And I did a cruise from Chile all the way down to the Falkland Islands, because I thought to myself, well, we fought a war over the Falkland Islands. Let me see what it's like. I loved the South Island. I did a cruise, and I did Australia and New Zealand, and friends came with me. And the South Island in New Zealand is absolutely stunning.
Wow.
Really stunning. I've since been to China, and I remember standing on the Great Wall and thinking, wow, I didn't think I would ever see this place. Also went to see the terracotta warriors. Before my husband died, we had planned a tour of India, but we had to cancel it when he got sick. But eventually I managed to get to India as well, and did New Delhi and Old Delhi and the place they called it the Golden Triangle. I did an internal flight to Mumbai, and I did that and China with a group. The last place I've been to is Japan. I was in Japan less than a few months ago.
Listening to you, one of the things that fascinate me is that independence and the way you do things. It tells me a lot about your personality. And I just want to throw that out there. What words have people used to describe you? I'm going to just say one to kickstart it, and I'm going to say adventurous.
I don't think I am really as adventurous as many other people who, I've met who travel. Because although I do sometimes travel by myself, there's some places I feel I need to do it with a group. India was one, China was one. So I'm quite happy to go on a cruise by myself. That is easy. You're on a ship, you're moving about, you get off, you see places.
But that's my point. You say it's easy, but for some people, even to get on the ship, even to book it, even to think about it, some people could dream about it, but not do it. So you may not, because I'm doing this because I really want to celebrate your personality. And I think that personality for me, it stems from what you even do, the way that you stand for rights, the way that I see you as somebody that injustice is something you don't tolerate. And that comes from grandma, believe it or not. So I wanted to ask you a question to tie into how I see you as your personality, and then maybe that might highlight some of the things. Generational influence. You definitely have been influenced by your grandma.
Absolutely, absolutely.
How do you see people, what would people say that you have influenced them and how?
I've influenced people by the way I have been influenced by my grandma. So that people, they know who they are. I do not like when people are telling me who I am. I'm very clear about that, who I am. And I will actually correct people. We all know the history of slavery. Slaves being moved from Africa to the Caribbean. And although we're all black and we're all the same on that score, we're still very different.
Yeah.
I'm quite definite that I'm a Caribbean. I'm a Jamaican. But there are many people who call themselves Afrocentric or Pan-Africans. I'm not an African. I cannot go and live in any African country by way of right. I do not have any African language. I lived in Botswana for a year, and they treat Africa as if it's a country when it's a huge continent.
It is a continent, yeah.
And all the people in different African countries are very different. I've had friends from the Gambia in particular. I've known people from Kenya, Uganda. And people do have differences. They have different languages. They have different cultures, different types of religion, brought up differently. I respect whatever people tell me they are, but I find it disrespectful when people want to tell other people who they are. Because my grandmother and my parents already told me who I am. I can sort of see what they're saying in a way, because at the end of the day, some people put everything down to racism. And it is true. If we're walking, if we're all out walking somewhere and the racists want to attack us, it doesn't matter if we're Caribbeans or Black Africans or Black Americans. All they will see is the color of our skin.
Yeah.
Yeah? So I can actually see what they're saying. But there are lots of differences as well. And I think we should just respect and celebrate each other and, visit other people, other countries, see other things, and just not be focused on the past, because maybe that's where I'm a lot different from many people. I do not focus on the past. I focus more on the present, where we are, and hopefully where we hope to be. But, I went to India and I had a brilliant time. In fact, my sister came with me, and she didn't want to go, but she came with me because I asked her to. And I can tell you, in India, in Mumbai, I went to one of the best New Year's party. In fact, the best New Year's party I have ever been to was in Mumbai. And it's a fascinating place. And I do think people miss out a lot if they are not prepared to just go out and experience something. Don't start with a closed mind. We cannot change the past, but we can create new memories and new things. So that's how I see life. And, I think that a lot of that came from my grandmother, because she was quite clear about who we were.
And I love that. That's what all about identity. And I don't know whether that fits in, but I'll ask the question anyway, because it talks about, even though grandma wasn't here, she took values from here. And I'm just trying to, and I know you say you think in the present, and hopefully the future, what the future holds. As we look at the Windrush, what lessons or values do you think that it has allowed to be passed on to the future?
Yes. I would just start by saying I love this country enormously. I was so very upset so upset the way many of the Windrush generation were treated. They were treated badly. When they were thrown out of the country, thrown out of their jobs, their homes, but by the government, I think that is really atrocious. I think everybody now realize that, because they actually contributed so much to this country. They built the foundation. And when I say they, I suppose you probably wonder why I'm not saying we. But as I said, I came to this country as a 9-year-old. So although I am part of that Windrush generation, a lot of the people who built the foundation for us in this country are people of my parents' generation, I would say. And obviously, we've continued. There are people like Sybil Phoenix, who is still with us. She's very, very elderly at the moment, but she did so much for young people in this country. She guided them, supported them, provided a home. She demanded things. She got people into education, young people into community groups, so that they could sort of learn and become better people. She was about the same age as my mother. My mother has passed, but she's very much alive. And you had other people like Asquith Gibbs, who was in the community. And I was saying just the other day, when I went to his funeral, the police are all, senior police officers were all pallbearers for him. Because although he challenged them, things like stop and search and all the sort of things that were happening with policing and young people back in the day, back in, I don't know, the 70s, 80s, that sort of time, 90s even, people from the Windrush challenged people, and people from all over the Caribbean. I mean, I'm a Jamaican, and there are lots of Jamaicans, but he was, I think, Grenadian. Mrs. Phoenix is from British Guyana. There are people from all over the Caribbean who are doing really good work in the community and building a structure. And many other people have come into this country since then, who have really benefited from what the Windrush generation had started. The Windrush generation is to be respected. People of my age, we also played a part, because, we were probably the first generation that came here and went through the whole school system. And that was a new experience, a different experience. And there's a lot that we could talk about. Some children experience trauma because they were pulled away from the country that they knew, often from the person who brought them up, such as myself, gone to school, something that's quite new and different, and we had to find our way. Our parents, most of our parents couldn't even really help us because they didn't understand the difference between the teachers in this country and the teachers in the Caribbean. And there was a great difference. But then we now can help our children more, and obviously our grandchildren. And they're evolving again. I've got my daughters, my children are born here. My grandchildren are born here. They're evolving. So we're evolving all the time. More and more, they're looking forward. They're seeing themselves. They're not thinking they're part of the Windrush generation, because they're not. They see themselves, most of them, or a lot of them, as black British. A lot of our children are now, and grandchildren are now mixed race children.
Mm.
So they start to see themselves as English. You see, so we're evolving and moving forward all the time. And I think it's dangerous when there are people out there trying to pull you right back to Africa and slavery and all that sort of thing. That's my personal view. But I do respect what others are saying, and I respect the roads that other people want to go down. But we're all at a different place. And that is what happens when people evolve.
Yeah.
We do not all reach the same point, place at the same point. And we've developed differences. So now we're at the place where we need to embrace each other, embrace different communities, and really try to look and find the things that can be more positive for us. We're always going to have racism, in my opinion, in my lifetime anyway. It's not as blatant as it used to be. It's still there. We've actually still achieved a lot, certainly since the 60s when I came, and the 50s when my mother came. We've now seen our people who, if they work hard enough, they can actually be very successful. There is still prejudice, there's still racism, but focus on the positive. And like I say, if you do come across racism in school or the workplace, you have to deal with it. You have to use whatever processes that are in place. Don't put up with it. But like people like Astrid Gibbs and people like that, they knew how to deal with it, and in the end they did get that respect that they deserve.
And what I'm hearing is, regardless of how we feel or our opinion, the key thing is that history has to be kept alive, because it's based on history that we can build our future.
Absolutely. We have to tell our children the history. My children, my grandchildren, you tell them the history, your history. They all know about my mother dear, who was my grandmother. I called her Mother Dear, we called her. They knew I came from Jamaica. They see Jamaica as a place of visit and to talk about and to return to. That's part of my history. Then you had my mother's history and my grandmother's history. And that went right back to the history of the Caribbean.
Mm.
And then the history of people being sold into slavery. And we mustn't forget that. People were sold into slavery and also stolen into slavery. They should know that history as well. But for me, the important thing is there's nobody alive today who is responsible for that. Well, I know that people have different views and people talk about reparations and so forth. I respect people's views. I'm not necessarily saying their views are my views, but my view is that there's nobody alive who was responsible for any of that. So I think we should all be welcomed in this country that we are living in. We should all benefit equally. Those are my views. They might not.
But they are human views. And I want to end this going back to the beginning, which is Lewisham. Lewisham has become that place that I believe represents everything that you've said, in the sense that it's become a place where it is very multicultural. And if not anything, it responds to the where we are right now and the where we're going, as a place where we can all live together regardless of difference. So my final question to you would be, if you were to write a letter to Lewisham, to family, to friends, about the past, present and future, or sum up Lewisham for you, And I want to tie it into the Hummingbird Club. How would you sum up Lewisham? Because I came into that environment and it was a community for me. It was a place where I saw different generations. I saw history in the room. So how would you sum up Lewisham, and how would you tie it into looking at Hummingbird?
Yes, it's representative of Lewisham in many ways, the Hummingbird, because there's so many different types of people in, who are members of the Hummingbird. People like Claire and Trevor and all the people who volunteer, they give so much back to the community. The people like me, people who go there. And I've got enormous respect for them because people look forward to going to the club. We have our music. People who have a Caribbean interest or even a black interest, I could say, are still welcome. We have, whether people are white or Asian or black or, it doesn't matter. I know I've seen people come in and they're all welcome to come to the club and participate. I know that I definitely look forward to going on a Friday, as I know many other people do. And it is like a family. I think throughout our lives we have different families in a way, don't we? When we go to work, we have a group of people that we work with. And if you're not happy at work, it's an awful feeling because you spend so much time at work with your colleagues. Management try to make sure that type of environment happens. And you can only do that if people are treated equally and fairly and respected, irrespective of who they are. And that's not just about colour, that's about gender, that's about religion, that's about sexuality, and as a people, as a black group of people, we need to also not just think about our colour, but we need to think about other marginalised groups and ensure that they too are not discriminated. I think that's what we all want, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's where the human element comes into play. Honestly, it's been really nice talking to you. And I'm thinking, I said last question, but I'm thinking somebody out there would be listening to this and say, Lewisham, I think I really need to come to Lewisham. I need to come and live in Lewisham. What would be the one go-to that you love about Lewisham that you would say to them, make sure when you come to Lewisham, you do not miss this? What would that one thing be? Or maybe two?
We do have some nice parks, open spaces, such as the park in Beckenham. I mean, I'm lucky to live close to a nice park as well. As I mentioned before, we do have the Broadway Theatre.
And this is where I celebrate you and I say thank you for making Lewisham what it is, because it's everybody within Lewisham that creates Lewisham and makes Lewisham a better place. And I celebrate the heart of justice. I celebrate your different abilities, and I love the travel. I've learned a lot about travel today. I've learned about being brave, being adventurous, being courageous, and just living life. For sharing your moments. And I'm hoping that people would listen to this and they would say, I did not know this about you. I'm learning something different. And this becomes a legacy for the children and the grandchildren and friends going, I see why. Now I know that's where that came from.
Yeah, the world is a big place and a beautiful place. I'd love people to see as much of it or even more than I have done.
And all the best with your continuous travels, because I know we're going to keep on counting.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.